The following is the most important extract from Muhammad's sermon to his followers. His last will and testament, just before he died in the year 632 AD. O people, understand my words which I convey to you. I leave behind me two things, the Quran and my example, the Sunnah. And if you follow these, you will never go astray. Most people, whether followers of Muhammad or not, do not know that Muhammad's Sunnah is actually considered and acted upon as equal to the Quran, and in some cases overrules Allah's instructions. For those who do not know, let me explain what Sunnah is. Sunnah is an Arabic word that means habit or usual practice. The Muslim usage of this term refers to the sayings and living habits of Muhammad. The Sunnah of Muhammad includes his specific words, habits, practices, and silent approvals. It is significant to the traditions of Muhammad and Islam because it addresses ways of life dealing with friends, family, and government. In the context of the biographical records of Muhammad, Sunnah indeed often stands synonymous to Hadith, as most of the personality traits of Muhammad are known through descriptions about him, his sayings, and his actions. There are instructions in Muhammad's Quran that are not followed because the Muhammadan exegetes decided for their convenience to follow his Sunnah instead, that his Sunnah overrules Quran. Case 1. The stoning verse. The case of the stoning verse or Ayat al-Rajm is a perfect example. A verse that does not exist in the Quran but only in his Sunnah. Al-Nur 24.2. The woman and the man guilty of adultery or fornication, flog each of them with 100 stripes. Sahih al-Bukhari 8.825, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Jews came to Allah's apostle and mentioned to him that a man and a lady among them had committed illegal sexual intercourse. Allah's apostle said to them, "What do you find in the Torah regarding the Rajm, stoning verse?" Deuteronomy 22.22. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die by stoning, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So shalt thou put away evil from Israel. Then Allah's apostle ordered that the two persons be stoned to death. I saw the man bending over the woman so as to protect her from the stones. Why don't the followers of Muhammad not comply with Allah's perfectly clear decree, but follow the one of Muhammad's Sunnah? How is it possible for any believer to abide by Muhammad's Sunnah and not by Allah's command? Why would Muhammad's Sunnah overrule Allah's explicit edict? I repeat again, the answer resides in the fact that the scholars of Islam, when it suits their agenda, consider Muhammad's Sunnah equal and sometimes superior to Allah's revelations. Sahih al-Bukhari 8.816, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Umar ibn Khattab said, "I'm afraid that after a long time has passed, people may say, we do not find the verses of the Rajm, stoning to death, in the Holy Book, and consequently they may go astray by leaving an obligation that Allah has revealed. Lo, I confirm that the penalty of Rajm be inflicted on him who commits illegal sexual intercourse if he is already married. Surely Allah's apostle carried out the penalty of Rajm, and so did we after him." The scholars of Islam exhibit an unusual split intellectual disorder syndrome that they suffer regarding many of the Quran and Sunnah instructions and contradictions. Omar asserts that the stoning was to be applied only to men or women who are married and yet fornicate. This punishment did not apply to men or women who have consensual sex when unmarried. Yet contrary to the letter and spirit of all the above, the enforcers of Sharia stone adulterers to death, be they married or unmarried, overruling both Quran and Sunnah. Case 2. Subjects of hijab and niqab. In the Quran, the term hijab is invariably used to mean a screen, curtain, divide, to separate the guests from the females of Muhammad's household. The story that explains the reason for the particular revelation of this verse is mentioned in detail in Bukhari Hadith 8.255/7. The Arabic word hijab is used in the Quran 4 times, as in the following verses: 7.46, 17.45, 38.32, 42.51, to describe a screen, a divide, a separator, a curtain, a veil of separation. In none of them is the word associated with any kind of dress or costume, covering the whole body of anyone or anything. Al-Ahzab 33.53. O ye who believe, enter not the Prophet's houses until leave is given to you. Such behavior annoys the Prophet. He is ashamed to dismiss you, but Allah is not ashamed to tell you the truth. And when you ask his ladies for anything you want, ask them from behind a screen, hijabi. That makes for greater purity for your hearts and theirs. It is crystal clear from the verse above that all of his instructions are to do with Muhammad's personal annoyance at the behavior of his guests. As usual with Muhammad and his Quran, an instant made-to-order revelation was descended to turn his personal objections into unchallengeable divine sanctions, emanating from the unsuspecting supreme pagan god of the Kaaba called Allah. By no stretch of the imagination can any intelligent being construe that this verse implies or means to cover the body of the female believer with any clothing. It only admonishes that there should be a separation between the guest area of the home of the believers from the private area. While the idea of the hijab was to create an atmosphere of modesty among the females and males of the believers, the male Muhammadan exegetes created an incredible set of lies to control their women in body, soul and mind, rendering them totally subservient to their will. To prove my point, I put down a challenge worth 10,000 pounds to the first human being who can show all of us the word hijab or niqab in the Quran as describing the covering of the believing woman from head to toe. Case 3. Wine prohibition. In the Quran, wine is called khamr and is mentioned explicitly in the following 5 verses only. Al-Baqarah 2:2.19. They ask thee concerning wine, khamri, and gambling. Say, in them is great sin, ithmu, and some profit, manfa', for men. But the sin, ithmuhuma, is greater than the profit, naf'ihima. In no way is this verse a clear and uncompromising edict on the two personal practices of drinking alcohol and gambling. I would like to point out that the adjectives used above to describe the usefulness or harm of drinking intoxicants and of gambling are in the form of admonitions, advice, and not as direct and unambiguous commands or prohibitions to desist from either of them. Moreover, it does not make sense to use the adjective sin, which is a moral concept, in contradistinction to profit, which is an economic concept. In fact, the Arabic word manfa' should have been translated to benefit and not profit, and the opposite should have been harm instead of sin. Nowhere in the Quran is the word haram prohibited associated with the drinking of wine. Nor is there any punishment for being intoxicated. The punishment of 80 lashes was mandated by the later followers of Muhammad from his Sunna, which represents a man-made ruling and not one from Allah. Yet once more, Sunnah overrules Quran, if not equal to it. An-Nisa 4.43. O ye who believe, approach not prayers with a mind befogged, sukara, until you can understand all what you say, nor in a state of ceremonial impurity. The word sukara means intoxicated. The verse does not prohibit the drinking of wine. It is only pointing out to the believers that they should not attend prayers while under the influence, nor should they attend when unclean. The Quran advises in this verse against drunkenness during prayers only. This means that the Muslims are actually permitted to drink some alcohol in between the times prayers, though the number of prayers per day would limit drunkenness. However, this further implies that after the night prayer, the final one, Muslims can even get drunk. Al-Ma'idah 5.90. O ye who believe, wine, khamru, and gambling stones, and divination by arrows are an abomination of Satan's handiwork. Eschew such abomination that you may prosper. Satan's plan is but to excite enmity and hatred between you with intoxicants, khamri, and gambling, and hinder you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Will you not then abstain? Yet once again, abomination means detestation or repugnance, and the verb used is eschew, meaning avoid, which is a warning and not an outright prohibition, haram. Al-Nahl 16.67. And from the fruit of the date palm and the vine, you get wholesome drink, sakara, and food. So-called believers and unbelieving kuffar, in the whole of the Quran, there are only 5 instances where the word khamr is used explicitly. And only in Al-Baqarah 2.219 is it frowned upon but not prohibited. Once again, Muhammad's Sunnah supersedes the Quran. As I had conclusively revealed in several of my chapters, every single letter, word, ayah, verse, and surah chapter in the Quran are actually the product and discretions of Muhammad's mind, representing his alter ego, his autobiography, but cleverly projected into the unsuspecting mouth of Allah to give them the aura of sanctity and divinity. Allah, Satan, and Gabriel are most certainly the multiple voices of the ventriloquist Muhammad.